And staying with that race for the top job, the Transport Secretary and MP for Welwyn Hatfield, Grant Shapps, is the latest to showcase his campaign video. He's one of 11 candidates in the running. Meanwhile, the stalemate between City Hall and the government to fix Transport for London's funding gap is growing staler by the day. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan says that without a deal, managed decline of services will start this Wednesday. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
London's famous red buses are being culled, and it could be just the start of a wave of cuts to the capital's transport network. Changes to almost 80 bus routes have been proposed by Transport for London as part of its ongoing tussle with the government over long-term funding. Like many Londoners, George relies on buses. He's launched an online petition to try to save the number 12, which runs from Oxford Circus to Dulwich.
At the moment, the proposal is to get rid of the 12, swap it for a 148 from Dulwich to Shepherd's Bush, and that which would divert at Westminster Bridge, which would mean anyone that is currently going to Oxford Circus or the West End would have to get off at Westminster Station.
The government has given Transport for London £5 billion in emergency bailouts since the start of the pandemic. It needs at least another £0.9 billion to keep it afloat until April.
My case for leadership is simple.
TfL's fate is in the hands of Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, who's just announced he wants to be the next Prime Minister.
The worrying thing is we've had a change of Chancellor. The Prime Minister has now stepped down. There's chaos in the government, and my worry is Londoners will face the consequences of that chaos.
Those consequences are?
If we don't get a deal by Wednesday, we will press the button on managed decline.
Managed decline is code for slashing spending. Plans to replace 50-year-old trains on the Bakerloo line would be postponed. The Mayor has warned an entire underground line could be mothballed, and 1 in 5 buses would stop running. There would be no money for repairs to flyovers like Brent Cross, which needs £100 million spent on it.
Those are Sadiq Khan's plans. There are other things that he could choose to do to save TfL money. He could reform TfL pensions, he could remove TfL nominee passes, but instead he's going down this route of scaremongering cuts.
Grant Shapps may have other things on his mind, but Transport for London's most recent funding settlement expires in just over 48 hours. Simon Harris, ITV News.
More trouble for the Transport Secretary. In the last couple of hours, the trade union ASLEF has confirmed their members at all 8 rail companies will go ahead with strike plans. Simon's here. What more can you tell us?
Well, Ray, if this strike goes ahead, and no dates have been set yet, it will affect 5 train companies which operate services into and around London. They're Chiltern, LNER, Great Western, South Eastern and London Overground. The Train Drivers Union, ASLEF, wants its members to be given pay rises of at least 10% to reflect the cost of living. London Overground, for example, has made an offer which is worth around 5%, so half that. The government, which effectively owns the railways, has described the strike threat as disappointing and has also pointed out that train drivers already earn on average around £60,000 a year. Now, during the strikes last month by the other big rail union, the RMT, most of the train companies were able to run limited services, and also because of working from home, the impact on the strike was much more limited than was expected. However, if this strike goes ahead, by ASLEF members, they drive the trains. Without drivers, there can be no trains.
OK, Simon, thank you.
London is bracing itself for the hottest day on record. The rare amber weather warning issued by the Met Office for Sunday has now been extended to next Monday, where temperatures are likely to reach the high 30s. That could lead to speed restrictions and cancelled trains, as Network Rail says tracks are at risk of buckling. A miserable few days for commuters then, as Simon Harris reports.
For tens of thousands of Londoners, travelling by tube goes with the job. Crowded carriages are a daily fact of life. Today's journey to work was even more of an ordeal thanks to the heatwave. In deep tunnels beneath the streets, there's nowhere for the heat to go, so the tube gets warmer and warmer. It's the middle of the day, and in central London at street level, the thermometer currently shows a temperature of just over 31 degrees. But underground, it's a lot warmer. This is the central line where the temperature is currently 34.9.
It's too hot, man. It's too hot. They need to do something about the air conditioning on the underground system.
It's absolutely fine. But I come from South Africa, so it doesn't really worry me.
I come prepared. I don't wear my jacket anymore.
Above ground, most trains are air-conditioned. The heatwave isn't yet severe enough to disrupt timetables. But if over the weekend temperatures soar to the point where tracks are in danger of buckling, rail bosses may order a blanket go slow.
So in extreme circumstances, if we see temperatures of, say, 36 degrees, our rail temperatures could be near 50 degrees Celsius. So we have to slow trains down because a slower train will exert less force on the rail, and that helps us to prevent those buckled rails.
The heatwave has arrived with perfect timing for London's newest open water venue. Swimmers can now take the plunge at Middle Dock in Canary Wharf, where they're told the water is both clean and safe.
It was really fabulous actually when you take off and when you have a breath and take a look and you've got these amazing buildings right by you. It's actually really special, yeah.
I just love swimming and in particular open water swimming, so was just really excited to hear there was a new venue opening in London.
Perfect way to come and cool off and enjoy the water. It's nice to have a new venue that's so close.
But with a rare amber weather warning issued for Sunday and Monday, there are fears some swimmers might try to cool off in more lethal stretches of water.
What they don't realise, although it's extremely hot outside, that water could be extremely cold, which when they jump in or dive in, that may create a shock to their system.
At Canary Wharf, the swimming sessions are supervised by lifeguards. If temperatures peak as predicted this weekend, Middle Dock could prove extremely popular. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Before that, his announcement was less than a week ago, but his unenviable in-tray is already full. Sir Mark Rowley is taking on a Met Police force which finds itself in special measures and with a long uphill battle to regain public trust. So what are some of the biggest challenges facing the new Met Police Commissioner? Simon Harris reports.
This is where I grew up here, 5 years of my life before I moved down further on the estate.
Sace has lived on Southwark's Aylesbury estate all his life. Like many young Londoners, he's had a difficult, sometimes hostile relationship with the Met.
I've been stopped and searched over 30 times since the age of 14. Every time it was the same excuse. High crime area, you look suspicious, you fit the description. They're searching my car for drugs, even though I told them what I do.
After this stop and search 2 years ago, Sace decided to approach the Met with an offer. He now trains police officers on stop and search tactics. He's also a mentor for young people. He doesn't underestimate the challenge the new commissioner faces to rebuild trust.
The police can't police their way out of this issue. This is linked to deprivation, linked to austerity, lack of opportunity, unemployment. But it's about now working with the Black British community, but also all communities to make people feel safe and try to build a relationship so you can build confidence.
Sir Mark Rowley retired from the Met in 2018. When he returns in the summer, he takes over a force in crisis. The Mayor is banking on him being a reformer, but how far should those reforms go? Is the Met too big and should it be broken up, with responsibility for some policing like counter-terrorism and VIP protection handed to the National Crime Agency?
That would mean the Commissioner in London would have to focus just on policing London without all those extra worries and pressures. And that means hopefully they would get the basics right, which clearly the Special Measures report shows the police are not doing in London.
Others argue the Met's basic command structure is fractured following a decision to amalgamate London boroughs. Instead of a commander for every one of the 32 boroughs, there are now just 12 commanders overseeing 2 or 3 boroughs each.
There was a far more unified looking at the communities that were within that borough, and I think the trust and confidence has started to wane since then, because at far more grassroots level they haven't got the grip that they need.
The structure of the Met might be in need of change, but Sace believes it's far more important to change the mindset of the capital's police force.
And Simon is over at the Late Debate studios preparing for his show later. Here's what you can expect.
On the Late Debate, I'll be talking about those challenges facing the Met with a former Deputy Assistant Commissioner who also twice stood to be Mayor of London. Brian Paddick, who's now a Liberal Democrat peer, will be joined in the studio by the Conservative MP Nikki Aitken and Labour's Ellie Reeves. But there's one other big political story we're also going to discuss, and that's the Conservative leadership contest. I'll be asking about Boris Johnson's legacy And we'll talk about modern slavery, following those extraordinary disclosures by Sir Mo Farah about how he was trafficked as a child and forced into a life of slavery in West London. That's the Late Debate here on ITV after news at 10.